Okay, so what's up? So today we got another episode of Full House. We got Full House Season 1, Episode 2, Our Very First Night. Yeah. So sorry I didn't say the pilot episode, which is called Our Very First Show. And this episode is called Our Very First Night, which is pretty interesting. So anyway, this episode first starts off, as always, with the theme. But then we get into the core of the episode where we see Jesse and Joey changing the show, and so Danny's like, hey, Tarzan was raised by apes. Tarzan was raised by apes, and that's not in any shape of his kid or whatever he said. So anyway, so then Stephanie walks into Jesse's room and discovers that used to be her room before she had to move in with DJ. So, and then she's like, and then she does that thing again where she tries to make him say, where he's like, where she does that thing where she's like, where she's like that her mom gave her that, and then he's like, yeah, those pink bunnies are fine. So, yeah, definitely might be my favorite character, but obviously. So anyway, yeah. So, but I'll mention. So yeah. So then there's their bedtime, and he's like, and Demi's like, hey, bedtime story. But then Jesse's like, just doesn't tell any bedtime story. And then she does that thing again where she's like, yes, he does. And then he's like, no, he doesn't. And she's like, yes, he does. And he's like, no, he doesn't. She's like, yes, he does. Like, she did that in the first episode, and now she's doing it here in the second episode. So they tell this story about, so Danny's like, hey, it was Cinderella, and she was, going to a ball, and it's like, Joey, he's like, Cinderella got to that bar, and that's where he met Bullwinkle, and then Bullwinkle's like, hey, do you want to go to the ball meeting? He's like, yeah, and then Jesse's like, hey, Cinderella and Bullwinkle, they got married, and he's about to leave, and he's like, when Dane's like, hey, sit down, and so he's like, so she's like, he's like, they got married, and then it's something. So yeah, there might be some things I watched from this episode that I just got finished watching. But yeah, Stephanie's like, he's like, hey, no, he doesn't. And he's like, hey, yeah, I like when Stephanie says, no, it doesn't. The things that really aren't true. It's really funny. So yeah, so then he's like, hey. So he's like, hey, the wolf was there, and the wolf was there, and he was able to blow down the pigs' houses because of wolf's breathing ingestion. And then DJ does her rolling eye roll thing where she's like, okay, like, and then Jesse's like, yes. So Stephanie's like, Danny, you're gonna have to read all of these, and gives him the books. It's super funny. And one of the books is like, hey, so they're about to leave, and Danny's like, hold up, they can't all leave at the exact same time because they can only leave if either Stephanie, Michelle, or DJ are with them. And since they're not with them, and then what happens is that DJ and Stephanie, they get out and they walk out, and since Jesse's forced to watch them, he's like, hold up, like, what is going on? And they're like, oh, their dad lets them eat ice cream and chocolate milk and all and all that. And he's like, "Do you take him for a fool?" And they're like Steffi has his face like, yeah, yeah. Steffi has that face like. So he's like, yeah. So then they do that other thing where Jesse invites his band over. And Jesse invites his band over, of course. And they do a song. And and he invites his band over, of course. And obviously, DJ and Stephanie, get out of the room. And obviously, sneak onto Jesse's performance. And he's like, hey, you can listen to 2 songs and then it's back to bed for you guys. But yeah, time passes where DJ has purple hair, Stephanie has purple hair, and they're still listening to Purple Streak, and they're still listening to Jesse's music. And then Joey comes in, obviously doing nothing about it, and obviously being not Danny's best friend, and not stopping his brother-in-law, because of course he isn't, and does a conga line because he, as you mentioned later, is a conga-holic. So then Danny comes and is obviously super mad, but Jesse takes the fall for Stephanie and DJ, saying it was his fault because of pizza and everything, and obviously, so yeah, so they do the pretend to be a sleep trick, and he's like, oh, ice cream and wait, what is it called? Ice cream and chocolate milk, or bowl. Ice cream and bowl. Jesse must have snuck up here and let you guys use this, even though you guys know the rule. And so they tell him the truth, and they're like, well, they'll apologize to Uncle Jesse, and yeah. So also a thing that happened in this episode, well, at the end, Michelle got her first baby tooth, and obviously, it's really pain when you have those, as we know. So he decides to get a teething thing for her, but obviously she throws it up because she doesn't want it. So he's like, hey, here's another one, but later, Joey's like, he couldn't find that, so he got a carrot out of nowhere. But yeah, so then they apologize to him, and that and he kind of like, hey, they're his nieces, and that kind of wraps up the episode. This episode, according to my opinion, isn't as good as the first episode of the first episode. It isn't that good because it's an okay episode. It's just not great. I know that people might disagree with me. They may disagree, saying that, oh yeah, this is Full House's first season, and it's great. But I just feel like they're just finding, when this episode came out, they were finding their footing. So obviously, this episode isn't going to be as good because they're still trying to find their footing and trying to find, oh, what can they do to make this show a classic as it is in 2021. But when it aired, they didn't know it was going to become classic. So obviously, this episode isn't that good to me. Hear me right. It is not good to me. It may be good to other people, but watching it just now, I just didn't find it all that interesting. Like, okay, I found it kind of funny with the whole, the Cinderella story, but that's all. But I'll see you next time for episode 3 of Full House when we review DJ and Stephanie's first days at school. See you next time.